Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. My name is Norberto Spangaro. I am a director of Doral Community Coalition. I'm very happy to be with you and a group of people who are with me tonight in this event, which is very important for our city. When prepared for this, I, I went back in memory, going back over 20 years, when I came to Doral and I was the observer of something that I never experienced before, the creation of a city being born. I remember when people from the group that were working on the city at that time, creating the city, showed me the master plan, what the city would look like. And it was all a piece of paper, just a piece of paper with different colors, beautiful colors, and talk. 20 years later, that paper that was shown to me had the midtown, downtown Doral, the Doral Boulevard, 41st, 36, and now it's a reality. When I walk around it, I saw this in paper, and now it's a reality. I saw the different developments. I learned why they were putting residential on the northwest, on the west, why the 87 was sort of a limit, why schools should be close to residential and residential shouldn't be close to industrial, and so on and so forth. It was a great experience, but most important, it was fascinating to see become a reality that make Doral one of the most beautiful and wonderful city to live, play, and work. Now the city is facing a difficult time, and it's a difficult time because of different things that are happening, which we're going to go through today. In my view, the Doral Boulevard is the core of our city. It's the place, it's like the center where we circulate, we go by. Things have changed. Actually, I got to say, the traffic has even improved, but the Doral Boulevard is under threat. And that's what we're going to be discussing today. We're going to go in an order. We have very good people here, excellent people. We have representatives from the community. We got Fernando Horudnier. We have Richard McIntosh, James Ferguson, who are very, very involved residents of Doral, and in particular of the area that we're going to be talking about. We have Claudia Mariaca and Yvette Gonzalez Petkovich, the director of the Doral Coalition. I'm going to pass immediately to Yvette, who's going to tell us what is happening this week and what we should know. We're going to tell you a lot of things that you probably don't know about it, and it's understandable. We are busy. We are today facing so many things in this new world we're living in, but the city is still very important. It's where we live every day, our lives and our kids. So without further ado, I'm going to present Yvette Gonzalez Petkovich. Yvette, you need
Yep,
to mute.
I decide. Thank you, Norberto. Thank you so very much for that introduction, of course. And so we're here this evening because tomorrow there is going to be a workshop at City Hall from 6 to 7 p.m. And at that particular workshop, they're going to be discussing. There's a particular developer that has applied to the city of Doral requesting that they make a change to the description or the definition of a particular zoning code, which is O3. And basically, this developer is asking the city to change, amend, modify, edit the fact that O3, right? He's asking that they allow assisted living facilities, or ALFs, as they're typically referred to become part of that particular O3 code. And so this is essentially a one step in the direction of a very large development plan on the corner of 97th Avenue and Northwest 41st Street, which is Doral Boulevard. It essentially encompasses about 18 acres right in that corner. And this particular developer is making this request because there is a second application that is not necessarily part of tomorrow's workshop, where the developer wants to develop a project on that land that doesn't include that includes not only supposed assisted living facility facilities, or at least a building that would address the assisted living facilities. But it also involves a plan with multiple buildings, multiple residential units, as well as it's essentially, it would be mixed use with retail. There's a hotel as well that they have presented. So for tomorrow's purpose, it's really only as to his application to change the or modify the O3 zoning and add assisted living facilities. That area is zoned O3. However, under O3, assisted living facilities or ALFs are not permitted. And so this developer is asking the city to change that code in order to permit assisted living facilities on that particular plot of land. And so I think it was really important for us to sort of explain what the purpose of this workshop is, because I think the issue can get complicated. I think that most people catch on to the fact that while this may seem like a small little request to allow these ALFs on this type of zoning, the reality is that this developer is in fact trying to launch a much bigger project. And so for the coalition, it was incredibly important to ensure that people were properly informed, that they didn't have a misconception about what exactly is going on or about the importance of this particular workshop. And from my perspective, and I think I speak largely for the coalition as well, it is one small step in a direction that the grand majority of residents, I would even venture to say probably all residents, would not favor, at least the ones that are most closest to that particular area between on the corner of Northwest 41st Street and 97th Avenue. And so those who intend to appear tomorrow, I think that the important part is to ask as many questions as you can about the developer. And keep in mind that this workshop is something that the developer is required to do in order to proceed, with projects such as this. So Norberto, you asked me to share what tomorrow's workshop is about. That is actually what it is specifically about. Now, I suspect that there are going to be people there that will ask a lot of questions about the developers, bigger plans. And I think that whoever is listening and cares about this issue and cares about Doral Boulevard and cares about the future of our city and the overdevelopment that is occurring, essentially, especially if this happens, they need to attend and really put this developer, sort of put his feet to the fire and ask the right questions to ensure that whatever we are being told is genuine and sincere and honest. And so I think it's a great opportunity for the residents to learn exactly what the developer has in mind and what his intentions are. So that's it, Norberto. I think that's the best way of explaining it. You're muted. Norberto, you're muted?
Yes, I'm muted. Sorry. No, I'm not. Thank you very much, Yvette. I really appreciate it. I think the effect is that it was the Doral Community Coalition actually about, I guess, 8 years ago that presented the resolution that was approved, under which the developers had to present to the community their projects. Now, the intent of that was always to submit overall projects, the full project. For the first time, we're seeing something that is going in piecemeal basis. And actually, I got to say something that I have been discussing with the previous administration and some of the people in the current administration. This project is not new. This project was discussed with the prior administration, who, as part of the process, basically rejected it. So this is not new. And also, it has now an additional effect. And this is like, we happen with our children sometimes. You ask for something, you give something, you give it. We always said, don't give one finger because they get a whole arm. Well, this is the same thing. We're facing a case where once you give one thing into it, it triggers a lot of different alternatives that gives the developer different positions and also better positions for the future, and creates rights that do not exist if you don't approve what is being discussed right now. So we're going to go that now to the next presenter, Claudia Mariaca. The project was presented last year, was discussed with the previous administration. It was discussed with the current administration. The coalition has presented in its website. You can see it, all the documents going back in January. But a new factor came into play, a factor which is very critical for the city of Doral, but also for every city in the state of Florida, which is the 102 law, the live law. Why? Why this law? Because it interferes with that dream that I mentioned when I opened today's meeting. The whole plan was created based on concepts and ideas of where to place what in a city. This law, if it is misinterpreted, basically throws that plan into the garbage. The city has no further control on what is happening in it. There are serious discussions about it. This law, and Claudia will explain it further ahead, uh, is going to be effective July 1st. It's not even in effect today. So we are facing now another challenge. And with that, I'll let Claudia Mariaca talk about it in more detail. Claudia, thank you. You can unmute, Claudia. You can talk.
Sorry. Thank you very much. So, thank you. I wanted to make some corrections and make sure that we're very, very clear, because I don't want anybody to accuse anybody that's in this panel today or the coalition of misinformation or misinterpretation. So, I want to thank Yvette for clarifying tomorrow's workshop regarding the land use text amendment that is required. I believe that it's in addition, there's 3 other parcels in the city that would also be affected by the change. You can't just change one particular parcel itself. It's called spot zoning and it's not legal. So they would have to change all of them. In my personal opinion, I don't think that any change is required. There's other places within the city that can accommodate assisted facility living arrangements, and not necessarily on the corner of 97th and 41st, which in conjunction with the rest of this project and the additional 600 units of residential, plus the additional office, plus the additional commercial, would create a real bad situation in that already failing intersection for any kind of medical assistance that might be needed for an assisted living facility for the elderly. So that being said, I want to make sure that something is understood. When this project originally came to previous administrations, it was a different project. It was actually a bigger project with hotels and car dealerships and all kinds of things. And it was immediately shut down. It wasn't even relayed to the rest of the elected officials or the staff, just because of the severity of the impact it would cause for the city in its entirety. However, in this past legislative session, there was a bill called SB 102 that promotes the ability to build workforce or affordable housing. Okay. And I want to bring that up because it's important to understand what affordable housing means. So if you could put the little meaning for affordable housing, I don't know if you have that, Norberto. Basically, it's for a medium household of about 4 people that have up to $94,000 or lower income. That is the affordable housing. Okay. So I want to make it clear what that threshold is. So what this bill does is allow anybody to come into a city, and as long as they have within the entire project, 65% of it is mixed use residential, and 40% of that 65 is affordable housing, they can build up to the highest density in the entirety of the city. So what this developer has done is gone into an area that at the moment is zoned to allow 16 units per acre, which is a total of about just over 200 units, and now has brought that up to over 600 units. When you add the assisted living facility, which is a separate request that will go to council for a vote, we're talking about over 700 units. Okay, that is a serious impact. And like I told you, these are failing roads and failing intersections that cannot handle it. Now, what can the city actually do about this bill? Technically, as it stands right now, this is an administrative process. The large part of this project would not even go to council necessarily for a vote. It will go further down on the details of what this project is going to look like, but not on the massive amount of it. Now, I do want to bring an update to everybody because earlier, just a few minutes ago, during the zoning meeting, I want to personally thank Councilwoman Digna Cabral, who had the courage to bring up the concerns of our residents and ask her colleagues sitting on the council to hire an independent firm to not only review this bill, but to also challenge its validity when it comes to this application in the city of Doral and many other cities. Part of this bill that tells us we can't do anything about it is actually sunsets in 10 years. So there's a lot of moving parts. So unfortunately, she did not get the rest of the council to agree. They're going to keep it in-house, not to really challenge it, but just to kind of explain it. Why should that be a concern for every resident? Because it wasn't done until now. So why should we believe that this is going to change? Now, the other concern I have is that it was brought up that there's actually talks already about bringing amendments to this bill during the next session, which would actually give us more motivation to fight the validity and the application of this bill to ensure that within the next year, we don't have an extreme amount of projects coming in using SB 102. We shouldn't be concerned just about this project on 97th and 41st on the southwest corner. We should be concerned about the application of the same bill in the other corners on 97th and along the 41st Street corridor. So be vigilant. We're not here to confuse. We're not here to lie. We're not here to tell you something that it's not. Those are the facts. And you need to make sure that you go and you require that your elected officials take any and all measures, as extreme as they may be, to fight this bill, because it's going to cause the downfall and the collapse of every one of our roadways and our services, including parks and police. This is going to have a huge impact. It's not going to bring the same amount of tax dollars as a regular bill, because this bill also brings a lot of tax breaks for the developer. But that being said, I want everybody to take a look back at what happened earlier today in the zoning meeting to see exactly where the council stands and what the issues are moving forward. And with that being said, I can answer any questions, but I also want to bring up two of the residents and members of Costa del Sol, because they've been dealing directly with the impact of what this project would mean for them, and also to voice the concerns of hundreds and even thousands of residents regarding this type of project going up. And mind you, again, I think that we need to take a stand against the bad faith of this developer moving into our city and say no to any change, including this small change to the E3 code in our planning definitions, because any change right now can have a huge impact moving forward. So that being said, I'd like to just give the floor to the other two residents and active members of our community to see what they have to say, and any questions that I can answer as well.
Thank you, Claudia. We're going to go through with Jim and Richard McIntosh. We got a lot of questions. We're going to answer the question. Let's go through the people here, and then we will go through the questions. I also have some questions for Rivera and Claudia. So welcome, James Ferguson. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you for inviting us here to your meeting. I was not familiar with the coalition before, so it's good that you guys are involved in some of this. As Costa del Sol, we're the community that's most impacted by this project because we border most of the project. And the issue is that we have a lot of homes that are looking at that area, that their backyards are going to be seeing construction cranes and things for the next couple of years. And I think at least half of Costa del Sol will see, once these buildings, if they were built the way they are per the plans, half of Costa del Sol is going to have a view of these buildings. And right now, when you go through our back gate, you have an unobstructed skyline, as do most of those units. That will go away. So I think we have a lot of concerns about the height of the buildings, the fact that there's like 4 or 5, 10 to 12 story buildings, the density, the noise that's going to happen, not only from construction, but the noise that's going to happen once it's up and operating as a development. We have a lot of peace and quiet in Costa del Sol, and we like it that way. And that's going to be a huge interruption to that. There'll be a number of townhomes that their backyards will be facing, construction for the foreseeable future. And I don't think they're going to be very happy with that. They're building, their proposal is almost 700 units. In Costa del Sol, we have 768 units over, 100 acres or whatever. Essentially, they're going to put 700 units in the area, roughly the size of our driving range on our golf course. So that's a lot of density. What we've done at Costa del Sol is that, we've emailed the residents to advise them of the existence of the project and for them to get involved and write, to the city council their concerns. We've also written individually to the individual board council members to express our concerns. The mayor has agreed to be at our August, I think it's August 8th or so, board meeting along with Julian Perez from the city. We have a lot of concerns because this is going to be very disruptive to Costa del Sol. It's going to have a huge impact on Costa del Sol, as well as, of course, the traffic, because, the developer said they're going to do a traffic study, but none of us need a traffic study to know that the traffic's going to get probably exponentially worse. I mean, just yesterday, when I was leaving the back entrance or 97th around, let's say 9:30 in the morning, it took me about 5 minutes just to get out because of all the traffic along 97th that's backed up to 33rd Street. So that's only going to get worse. And I would like to just make one note. I saw something on social media saying the developer promised golf carts. Well, there's no golf carts promised.
Okay.
And so, we have Ricky on the call. Ricky is my next door neighbor and also is heavily involved in our golf course, which will be severely affected by this. So turn it over to Ricky.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman, and everybody. Thanks for having us here. So the major concern that our community has is obviously the traffic situation around the community itself. 97th Avenue is heavily used right now. I know you guys probably know that we are in the midst of our main gate repair, which is on the 41st Avenue. We haven't had that for quite a bit of time, for about a year and a bit, and we're about to open it back. That has caused a significant strain on our community that we imposed on ourselves. That's one thing. But now, and that's a temporary thing. When this community opens up, the density that it's going to have, we think that, first of all, they're going to put another traffic light 300 yards away from our present traffic light. So instead of going from our entrance all the way to 97th, we will then have a traffic light in between by public somewhere there, which they are going to use to make their left turns and everything out of that community. So it's going to be more traffic lights, first of all. That's what they told us. And we're going to be able to have that intersection, which is already heavily utilized, is going to be a problem. In addition to that, the buildings that they're proposing are 14-story buildings. And that, at 14 stories in height, we did some studies, and that will actually cast a lot of shadow on some of the buildings in our community as well as on our golf course. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west. All the buildings which are to the west of the property are 14 stories tall plus. It will cast shadow. It's like trying to grow stuff under a tree, which obviously that does not happen easily. So it will end up. Right now, we already have a flooding situation in that area because the prior tenant who was there changed the elevation somewhat, and some of it drains into our golf course. If it continues and we have shade, it will actually make things worse and create a stench in the environment as well. So that's going to affect us environmentally as well, we believe. And it's going to, and obviously all those people will lose the privacy of their backyard right now. They will be having a 14-story window, a 14-story unit, which is approximately less than 100 yards from them. And some of them will have it a little further, but with quite a few of them will have it less than 100 yards from them, maybe 75 yards from them. So that's a very close proximity. In addition to that, I want to add to what Jim said. We had a meeting a little while ago, about 2 weeks ago in our community, our board meeting, and we invited our legal representation on. We were actually considering getting legal representation to go to the city to help us fight this cause. In that meeting, it was actually deferred. And the reason it was deferred was because we thought that we were explained that there were significant hurdles to overcome, and we needed to have more of a joint effort to go ahead with the whole thing. So we determined that it was best to join with other associations and try to take this fight to them. Our legal representation at the time told us, look, you will probably have something built there, which we are aware of. We don't think that from a community's perspective, we're going to be able to stop the project. This guy spent a lot of money on his development. And to some degree, we want him to build something there to make better use of the land. But the use which he has right now, the proposal he has right now, is not conducive to that area at all. As I said, for traffic, for various other environmental issues and everything else. It will have a negative impact, not only for our community, we believe, but other communities like Gold Coast, which is north of us. All those communities north of 97th will not be able to come south. All of those south, like Costa Verde, will not be able to come north. Right? It will be a very difficult situation. And for us to go east, it will be extremely difficult as well, which it already is at this moment. At any given afternoon, you can see traffic build up there from 4 in the afternoon till about 6 or 7 in the afternoon, all on 97th and on 41st Street. So it's already a very congested area, and this will only add to that congestion, we believe. And as far as an ELF goes, Costa del Sol is not adverse to an ELF. Our residents are aging as well. We are one of the oldest communities in here, and we have probably a very old population. They would obviously like to stay in the area, but the ELF that they're suggesting, even some of the elderly people have said, this is not really conducive to an ELF. This is putting people in the middle of a very tight environment, a very hectic environment, which is not something that you would put an older person into. And they will see that it would be used in that way. One person even said in the meeting that it may get abandoned after a while, and then it would turn it into regular housing, which is probably what is going to be the case at that point in time. So for all those reasons, I mean, traffic is number one. As I said, the environmental issues, we don't believe the ELF is the right. We are for ELFs, but this is not an ELF. Let's not fool ourselves. This is not an ELF centric community. This is a community which has an ELF that somebody has put there to try and get some way around something else. We're not sure exactly. I'm not a lawyer. But that's our opinion from the Costa del Sol and Golf Club, as well as from the association side of things. Turn it back over to you guys. Thank you so much for hearing us out.
Thank you very much, Rick. We have, there are some people that are lucky. Probably they are not facing the traffic issues now. Fernando Hurunier will now talk to us as a resident. He's in the beach, and he has stopped his vacation time to talk to us. So welcome, Fernando.
Thank you, Roberto. Actually, I have not stopped my vacation at all. Sorry, but not sorry. But I just wanted to thank the members of Costa del Sol. Those are very, very pungent points that you bring up. I have 3 comments, and it's unscripted here. I have only the stand to write on. The first point that I'm thinking about is on the presentation that was currently made, where we have the attorneys internally to review something that was already put before them. I want to remind everybody that before Senate Bill 102 came around, this was already something that was being worked on to help the developer to get this done. So what sort of confidence do we have that our city attorney, along with the administration that had been pushing this along with Julian Perez himself, would take it upon their interest to go in a different direction as to what they are already going on, to look at this in the city's interest and not in the residents' interest. I think that's a fallacy that I just don't believe. Secondly, I think if there is the text amendment that is still to be considered here, well, that is a change to zoning. It's a change. An amendment is a change. So if that's something that's going to come forth, the council can still vote or say no to this text amendment, because then it's done for that point. Why do we want to help the developer that everybody is expressing their very valid points against it, if we are going to have the help given to this developer by amending text in order for him to go ahead and go forth with something? Other point was that with the current building arrangement that we have there in that location, we have the ALFs, like was just brought up. That's added in there, and that was a very good point for the admission for additional density. That's not going to flow into other neighboring properties. Well, I think it will. I think we're going to see. Remember when the application was put forth, they were even talking about a pedestrian bridge across 41st Street into the current Publix shopping center, and the other kitty corner where the Walgreens is, that's owned by the Castells. They are friendly with this administration as well, and who is to say that that's not going to also, fall into some legal battle to additional density requirements requested. What we can do now is pressure our council to really defend our residents and our interest in that area. I'm a 23-year-old resident there in Doral Park, and that whole zone, it will be negatively affected by not only this, but further development down Doral Boulevard. Let's not fool ourselves when they say, oh, this is just this one property, it's only Office 3. This is not to end there, okay? And I think the last point that I had here was on the let me see here. Yeah, no, I think I hit them all.
Thank you, Fernando.
So I appreciate the time.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We're going to go now through. There are several questions here that I actually want to say for those who are going to attend tomorrow that it brings me back another memory. About 5 years ago, some of the same people were in a meeting that I guess it was pretty late at night. We, the coalition, were discussing with the support of a lawyer that we hired, because there was a project we were totally against it. That's the 8800 41st Street or 36th Street, the one that is after CVS on 36, right in front of the service entrance of the resort. That's probably the ugliest building that we have in the city, and it's probably, I will dare to say, it's probably the ugliest building that we have in Miami-Dade, probably. And the same players were there. And I remember one of them, who we're going to see tomorrow, saying this is going to be the most beautiful project in Doral. So be careful. Tomorrow we're going to have a marketing speech, a selling speech, and they're paid for it. They're doing their job. But let's not kid ourselves what is really happening. I also have the memories of some other projects we were against it, but there were people who were in Doral for many years, and somehow they have their hearts in Doral, and they were treated. Here we have a developer who's coming in to make money, and that's perfectly legal and honest. But we got to defend our city. This is a great city.
May I?
And I want to ask Yvette and Claudia, and I will refer to you some questions, but I would like to ask Yvette, this is a brand new law. This is a law facing the issue that we are facing today is with rentals. Okay. And as any legislator sitting in Tallahassee, you figure out you got to do something. I have seen these, thanks God they're not talking about price control, but pretty soon, who knows? But this is a law that has a lot of issues behind it. When you read it as somebody who is not a lawyer, but I got some experience, when you read it, you realize that this is throwing, as I said before, this is taking planning, master plans, everything to the garbage. Cities have basically no control. So this law is not going to work. I'm pretty sure. Also, we have seen this. I mean, in 30 years, rentals, and Liz Canchola was talking about how you're going to be pricing and controlling this. And we all know how you can deal with pricing and other issues. So this is an unsustainable, in my honest personal view, law. So it is really insane to act on it on the first date of it, if you will. So, but there are also considerations in the law and by the legislators that give a sort of context of what they mean. And sometimes you got to understand what they mean to understand where the law may end up with. Claudia mentioned this is only a 10-year law, so it will sunset in 10 years. So, Yvette, can you comment on that? What is the intention of the law and what do you read about it? And why that gives a perspective on what things can happen and why cities should fight for it?
Time that a piece of legislation is passed, there's always sort of this legislative intent that's written into the law. And from a litigation perspective and from a court perspective, the courts often look at the legislative intent of the law whenever somebody is challenging the implementation of the law, whether the law applies to whatever situation they're trying to fight against or they're suing against. And so in this particular case, it appears as though, I mean, the legislative intent is fairly general in saying that the idea behind the law is that they want to promote for every Floridian to have safe and affordable and accessible housing in the state of Florida. So very generally, that's actually how it is listed on the actual law and the way it's written. But once they talk about legislative intent, it's always sort of tied into policy, right? Like, what were the policies that the state of Florida was trying to push in terms of, approving a law like this? And when you actually dig in to the policies, that's when you really start to unravel and see that, at least from my perspective, and I think from the perspective of several, the policies that are intended to be promoted through this law don't necessarily align, for instance, with this project that we're looking at and that we're discussing on the corner on 97th and 41st. And so when you look into the policies, it lists several, but like, for instance, it talks about, areas that maybe are not developed yet, to go in there and develop them as affordable housing, as assisted living facilities, as these types of projects. It also talks about utilizing this law to bring more diversity into different communities. And so I highlight those two, for example, because for the most part, from the perspective of the Doral resident, I don't think as a city we fall into that particular type, the need for a policy like that. We're incredibly diverse. We've grown immensely over the last 10 years. And essentially, this particular law, a large intent behind it, arguably the main intent, was really to take unused land and encourage developers to take, these monies that are being offered to develop these properties and develop on those unused lands. It seems like currently what we have, at hand is that there is a developer that's essentially using a loophole to try to bring a project like this into the city of Doral. And it seems like currently the city is not really being proactive enough to challenge the fact that this particular developer and this project doesn't necessarily align with the legislative intent behind this law. And therefore, that creates grounds in order to challenge some of these things. And so I think it's important to always look at the legislative intent, because it is a brand new law. As Norberto stated, it's not even, it hasn't even come into effect yet. It comes into effect on July 1st of this particular year, and it already has quite a bit of opposition from different cities about it and how it's going to be implemented. And so I just think that the city cannot be complacent and cannot be of assistance to this developer in utilizing a loophole, but rather should use everything available to them, including the legislative intent, which is what I'm talking about right now, to challenge and not allow this project to come forward. And Norberto, if I may, the city has many remedies available to itself, and typically the remedy that most people looked to immediately is, litigation. Can we sue them? Can we prevent this from happening? And so, my mindset is, why, with the way that this law is currently written, and with sort of the use of seemingly of loopholes in order to make this bigger project happen, why should the residents front the bill of fighting the developer? The city should do everything legally possible to prevent this from moving forward, and let the developer challenge the law and work it from that angle. And so I just share with that, not necessarily a definitive strategy, but just to make certain that the residents understand that this isn't black and white by any means. And I think that what the city should be focused on is putting themselves in a position where we are not the ones challenging the law. Rather, let the developer challenge the law and tell them that the city of Doral is not complying with it. And at that particular juncture, then we can figure out what to do. But at a bare minimum, the residents have seen that, in fact, when our electeds say that they are against overdevelopment, that they're sincere about it. But to just throw our hands up in the air, or rather for our electeds to just throw their hands up in the air and suggest that there's nothing they can do because of this law that hasn't been tested, isn't official, isn't effective currently, and there's so much about this project that smells like the true intention is not affordable housing or an ALF, but rather something bigger and far more profitable. I think that the city should force them to challenge the law and not essentially just roll over and allow it to happen. I think that questions the sincerity of it.
I think the question, and I'll pass to Claudia. I'll put it up here. You said, Claudia,
Right.
that
So
the word is here. It says promotes workforce housing options in latent commercial areas. I'm going to put everybody probably on the discussion. What does latent mean?
So let's understand why these things happen. First of all, most of the times that bills are brought up, or some of these bills that afterwards we pull our hair and try to understand how our legislatures up there decide to make these changes. They normally start because there's one municipality somewhere in the state that's having a problem they can't fix. So what they decide to do is get together and say, okay, well, let's change it for everyone. And we'll just blanket the law and let them deal with it. And this is what's happening with this particular bill. This is a bill that was sponsored and it came out of Naples, that was having a very difficult time in having people move to Naples because it was so expensive. And they were having issues with having developers come and develop. So this bill is highly profitable and highly focused on bringing dollars into the state and bringing developers into certain areas. Now, right there, it says promotes workforce housing options for latent commercial areas. So this is the idea of going into areas that are being underutilized. Commercial areas are being underutilized. So when you look like at a city like Miami over the past decade, and you look at Wynwood, that's something that happened there. You take an area that was kind of falling apart, not being used to the fullest extent, and you build. This isn't something that really applies to the city of Doral. So it's a way to challenge this. Now, there's a couple of things I want to clarify, and this is why I want, and I think it's important to have everyone together looking out and making sure that we understand what's happening. This isn't about just this project, and this isn't about politics on the local level. This is about the right thing to do moving forward. When you sit down, and again, I want to read something because it happened just a few minutes ago. When you have a council person that goes to the council and asks for them to put their money where their mouth is and fund for independent counsel to defend us, which is their right, because by the way, this isn't just going to have an impact on us as residents. This is going to have a major impact on services on behalf of the city. So when they're not willing to do that and stay in house, I have a lot of questions, as should every other resident, because this SB 102 isn't new to anyone that's been dealing with this. In fact, the developer has been talking about the usage of this bill if it was signed into law for months. So my question for every resident would be, question the staff and question all your elected officials to find out why they weren't using the services of the lawyers that we have hired for the city of Doral, to find out why can't we fight this bill. If there's already people, including the person that put this bill forward, if that person is already taking into consideration making changes, then that tells me there's an opening to fight this. And we shouldn't just sit back and get an opinion from the same lawyer that has already gone through and allowed this to happen, to let this happen. Because by the way, there are no meetings in July. So we're probably not going to get anything about this until August, when it's, by the way, probably too late. And instead of fighting this, we're going to give the opportunity to tell everyone, hey, you have a year to put in your application because it might change up in Tallahassee. Well, I think it's a time for the city to take control and to set an example and to lead by example, at least in South Dade, and say, we're not going to put up with this, and do everything it can to fight this. This isn't political. This is about what's right, because it's going to have a serious, serious impact on the city moving forward. And if we can spend money on so many other issues in the city of Doral, well, then we should be spending money on something that's this important. And I agree with the people from Costa del Sol when they talk about the assisted living facility. That is not the place for it. There should be no changes. And people going to the zoning meeting tomorrow, which you're right, Norberto, it was the coalition that brought that up and it passed into law. Then you should be requesting your elected officials to vote against any and all changes that would affect any areas in the city of Doral at the moment, especially knowing that something like this can occur in other areas of the city, because it's going to be open season for developers to just come on in and take advantage of situations like this.
Claudia, I'm thinking of some people who are probably listening. A lot of people came in late. Okay, we had to fight for 102. The city has to fight for 102.
Yes, I'm sorry. Ricky, can you go ahead, unmute yourself? Can you put everybody on the screen, please?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ricky.
Yeah, so Claudia, I think, first of all, Yvette, thank you so much for saying what you said about the developer having to, they should be the ones fighting us, right?
Right.
I think that makes total sense. In our last board meeting we had, as I told you, we were trying to retain legal advice from a lawyer to help us with this aspect. In the end, we deferred the decision for a later date, various factors involved. But it really, I'm happy that you are saying that there is a mechanism involved, because what we have been told to date is that there is nothing that we can do to fight the situation at all, right? And
well, there's nothing you can do if you don't try.
Exactly. Now, it was brought to the attention of the city, and Jim will tell you that we wrote letters and everything else to say we've been paying taxes. Costa del Sol is a very old city, old neighborhood. We were here actually before the city was incorporated and everything else, right? We've been paying taxes for, I don't know, since we became incorporated, and much before that. And now we are asking for some assistance, not only on behalf of us, on behalf of everybody else in the area, because it is going to affect not only us but everybody else. And the city is pretty much telling us now that, they really don't fight with landowners in a situation where it's owner versus owner. But that's not really the case. The case is this area was never really set up for something like this.
Well, and
when Doral, the downtown Doral was created, it was created with those large buildings in mind, those 14, 15, 20 something story buildings. that makes sense. There is all of the infrastructure there to support that. What we have here, it cannot be sustained. We do not believe it can sustain that.
So here's the important thing to notice, Ricky, that you just said. That's very important to make very clear, because again, we talk about misinformation and there's certainly a lot of it out there. There is absolutely no way to compare this situation, this project, this bill with anything else that was ever previously approved by any administration, okay? Because this is a different animal. This is something that has not been tested before. No one, and I'm sorry to say this, no one in their right mind could say that this, why wasn't people fighting about the Trump, or why weren't people fighting about the where the cows are? Those are completely different situations where the law already existed. This is a change of the zoning that, because of the new law, does not allow for a vote against the change for the zoning. Okay? So nobody can say that there's any precedent for this, that anything that anybody, including any administration since this city was invented, that this took place before. Now, that being said, there was a vote that took place where Shoma was built in Sanctuary that went against the developer because he had actually done everything correctly and was afforded extra units, higher density, because he had added affordable housing to that particular build. Okay? Now, in order for the council, they wanted to do something for the residents. They voted against the additional units, although legally he already had the right to do so. The city got sued and they lost. There was no fear at that time of that lawsuit because there was an election coming up. Why the fear now? Why not put the money where your mouth is and hire an outside counsel and fight this? Because at least it gives us the opportunity to see what's going to happen moving forward. I will guarantee that if nothing is done in the next couple of weeks, you can kiss that corner goodbye.
Claudia,
Norberto, if
I
I may.
think Jim. Wait. I think Jim has something to say.
Okay.
No, I just want to chime in because I think I lost my camera. I've never used this app before, so it's anyway. So, now just to reiterate, I mean, this project, is a monstrosity for anyone that lives in Costa del Sol because of the size of it, and it is a threat, to the peace and quiet of what we have in our community. What we've been used to all these years. I've lived here since like 1995. I've been on the board for 20 years or so. As has like Victor Espinosa, who's also on the meeting, and we're really concerned about our community. We've all worked very hard to get Costa del Sol to where it is. Years ago, we had to fight developers that were trying to buy our golf course and basically build homes on it. So we ended up, all working together and ended up buying the golf course. And along with that came our pool and clubhouse, tennis courts, and all this stuff that we actually never owned, which a lot of people didn't realize. So we bought all of that, going back like 11 years ago, 2012. So, we have a lot of concern about the well-being of our community, about our residents. We're kind of like an oasis in Doral. I guess this place is calling itself the oasis, but we're the real oasis, right? We've got the lakes, we've got the golf course, we've got, until now, at least some peace and quiet. But, we have to, be really concerned about, half the residents in our community who are going to have a view of this project. The people that are bordering that area in our clusters, Alcantara, Adra, Barcelona, a few other ones, are going to be basically dealing with construction for the foreseeable future. They're going to have construction cranes behind their house. They're going to have construction noise. They're going to have dust. They're going to have all kinds of things, not to mention all the kind of dirt or mud they'll be tracking in and out of that community, that development onto the highway, into the roads. Because I just took a drive the other day along 33rd when you go past like 107th and 109th and it makes the bend and you can see where they're moving earth and all of that. That whole road is full of mud. So, you go through in your nice clean car and it's all of a sudden it's full of mud. So you're going to have all these kind of issues, happening, on this major an important artery, which is already clogged as it is. It's already really overburdened with traffic, and this would add much more to it. And like to Ricky's point, we have a golf course here, and this thing is surely going to be at higher elevation, so we're going to have a lot more drainage into our golf course. There's possibilities of shadowing from the building that will affect the greens and things, the play of golf, and all of this. So this is something that we are taking seriously. But we do need everyone, including homeowners from other communities, to write to their city council members, to stay involved. I think, as Ricky says, at the end of the day, the developer bought the property, and something in some form will probably go there. But we just have to hope it's a far cry from what it is right now, which is just something completely just unbearable for most of our residents here in Costa del Sol, as well as the other ones in Goldview and everywhere else that's in this area. Because if the traffic gets backed up on 41st, people are going to start using 33rd. They're going to start using 58th or whatever, which are already clogged as it is. So you're going to be basically diverting traffic all over the place, and we're going to be just one big city of gridlock, like Sao Paulo, Brazil, or something like that. So that's So.
Thank you. I think Yvette has a comment, and with that, we're going to be closing pretty soon. Please, Yvette.
Thank you, Norberto. Thank you for the opportunity. So to Jim and to Richard or Rick, I want to make certain that you all know some information that I was able to research. And from the looks of it, you both of you have already said, and I've already heard it from others, that this developer has already purchased this land. And that fact, I think, is pretty important, because oftentimes what we as residents hear when it comes to development is that, well, they bought it, it's privately owned, as long as, the land use and all of that is aligned with it, there's really nothing the city can do about it, which, in certain circumstances, that is the truth. However, from a review of the Miami-Dade County property records, a search of it as of yesterday or possibly this morning, I do not see where the Apollo companies or any variation of them actually owns this land as of yet. And so whether, as far as I can see, whether they purchased it and they haven't recorded their deeds or what the story is, but I think that that's something that needs to be inquired of this developer tomorrow, because at the end of the day, I have been hearing from the city government that in fact the developer owns this land. If they have not yet actually purchased the land, and if it is a conditional sale on the passage of this change in the zoning, etc., then I absolutely think, number one, that there is misinformation that has come out directly from the city. And number two, I think that it changes the ballgame completely when we learn that the developer hasn't even purchased the land yet. So there are no rights there for him to exercise. And so I hope I'm wrong, and maybe things have just not been updated, but I find it very difficult to believe that a developer of that caliber would wait to record the deed. And so currently, if you look up those particular plots, and what I see is that the owner is Doral Costa Capital LLC, care of Triarch Investment Group Incorporated. And so, Richard and James, when you talk to your neighbors and your friends, don't message that it's purchased, because that is misinformation that I believe you all received. I hope I stand corrected, but we'll see about that.
Thank you very much. We're going to be with this. I'm reading here latent, existing but not yet developed or manifest. It's interesting because there is something that is not latent, is Miami-Dade County. So I think this gives you a lot of arguments to fight. Now, last question, Claudia, and with this we close. I want to thank everybody who has been here. This is going to be, has been recorded. It's in our website. We're going to produce a summary for all of you. We're going to send it to you. We really appreciate it. There is one thing we should all know. If we don't participate, we don't deserve it. Or worse, if we don't participate, we deserve it. So let's keep in mind that. Claudia, a question. Let's say we're going to fight 102. We know it's going to change. We shouldn't do anything with 102. But meanwhile, let's approve this tomorrow or whenever it comes in. Why we shouldn't?
Well, right now there's two things, right? First of all, the only thing that the council is going to be able to approve or not is going to be
Land use change.
the modification for the text for the O3 for the Office 3. I agree with James and with Richard and the stand of Costa del Sol's boards, which is even if assisted living facilities are needed within the city limits of Doral, there are already zoning areas that they're already approved to receive those facilities. I don't think at this moment anything needs to change within that those parcels to accommodate anything regarding this particular developer. That being said, what the city is going to try to promote, or what the developer is going to try to promote tomorrow, and I do want to correct something, because I hate when people start saying that, the coalition is trying to do something political. When Norberto was talking about certain people being involved, he was referring to the lawyers and the lobbyists for the developers. He wasn't talking about anybody in the council. Those were the people that were involved.
Correct.
Those were the same lobbyists that pushed through very questionable projects in the past within the city of Doral. So that being said, I do believe that tomorrow what they're going to try to tell you is, well, it's better than an office building, which is already what is there. A medical office building. Is it better? I don't know. Maybe. It depends, because technically when you think about it, you're still going to have medical in there plus the residential aspect of it. In my opinion, if I had, and I'm not going to put my parents in an assisted facility, but if I needed that, I wouldn't put them on the corner of 97th and 41st when they're going to have to battle gridlock, God forbid, if there's a medical emergency needed. I would probably look for something that's closer to a major hospital, that's closer to a park, or in a better area, a situated area. So for me, this is really just an excuse for the developer to make a little more buck for his investment, and not really taking into consideration. So we got to be very smart about what is trying to be pushed through. And at this moment, I would say no to anything moving forward. As for what we can all do, as James and Richard and everybody mentioned, go talk to your HOAs, talk to your neighbors, write for the next several days to council. Ask them to change their mind. Ask them to put money into this, because if we allow staff, and with all due respect, I had the opportunity to work with Julian Paris in the past. He is a big believer in high density projects on major boulevards. He's not going to fight this at all. Trust me, he will not. And it's a big problem that we have right now. So we don't want this to look like the city he just came from, which is Coral Gables. We're the city of Doral, and we want to maintain our master plan because it was there for a reason. So Everybody needs to write in. Everybody needs to ask for this. This is about our future. This isn't about just politics right now.
Thank you very much. Everybody have a very good night. We're going to meet tomorrow. The coalition will be there. We will record a meeting. Claudia was absolutely right. I was referring to the lawyer. I remember that night, Claudia telling the lawyer that we'll pay a dinner for all Doral if people walk or go biking to work. And after 5 years, I haven't seen anybody walking or biking to work. So I'm willing to fight another one. We're going to hear that. People here walk and that. Forget about it. Thank you very much to everybody. We are doing the best for our city, our lovely city of Doral. Thank you.
Thank you all for organizing this.
God bless you all.
Good night, guys.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.